Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. It's been planes, trains and automobiles for me, but we're not all about me. We're here to talk about what happened this weekend in the world of motorsport. And it was a little bit going on. We had some exciting racing from the UK. In fact, we had some very exciting racing from the UK.
The best
NASCAR
racing was in the UK last weekend.
But we might differ with what we feel is the best racing. We had NASCAR.
Where are you? Where are you anyway? I thought you were on holiday.
I know. I wish I was on holiday. I'm doing a recce for our future project, and 8 hours in a.
I've worn the Lovecars holiday T-shirt. I thought you'd be chopping up on your suntans. I've worn your suntan thing. My grey hair doesn't look any better.
We don't look anything like that. For those of you that can't see, that are listening to this on the podcast, Tiff's wearing a very fetching T-shirt. We went into business selling these T-shirts. I think we sold about 50. We never got a penny for them.
I like it. It's a good T-shirt. Anyway, it's all right. I've got a holiday T-shirt on. You're not on holiday.
Okay, let's kick off. Let's just kick off straight with the action, and we're going to go with Formula One. There was no Formula One, of course, on the summer break, but we were together in Germany last weekend. What an amazing time last week with some Group C sports cars from Porsche. Just amazing. We're seeing the likes of who was driving.
Hans Stuck, Derek Bell, Jochen Mass. They're all just amazing.
It was really
celebrating, of course, 40 years of the famous Porsche 956 So that's to come on the TV series, coming sometime.
And YouTube.
And a bit of YouTube. Of course, you've got a YouTube story as well. Good.
Yeah, which is good. A few little interviews and just a bit of behind the scenes and getting their opinions on Tiff, which surprisingly were actually quite favourable. They probably only said that because he was in the room, but there you go. But we were sat in the airport in Berlin. It seems to be the story of our life, sitting in airports, but killing a bit of time. And we just said, why, if the FIA have admitted it was a human error in terms of this whole Michael Massey thing,
you won't
let
it go.
But why did Mercedes let it go? We are letting it go, but we're talking about it because it's topical, interesting. Why did Mercedes let it go? And it's very interesting. One of our most popular tweets ever. I think nearly 1,000 likes, and not just the Lewis fans. Of course, the Lewis fans said it was this shouldn't be happening. The Max fans saying get over it. And we're just trying to be a bit in the middle. I think it's a terrible decision, but you think just let it go, not even talk about it.
Well, I think the one thing was, even if they'd cancelled the race, which is one option, Max was still champion.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know, I mean, Toto, they dropped it. Actually, Toto's been a bit of trouble. So who was having a go at Toto for... Mario Andretti's had a go at Toto for being too powerful in the world of motorsport, which was interesting. And Toto in an interview said he thinks about Abu Dhabi every day. He still thinks about it. There was still Toto's under a bit of pressure even now.
But for me, the solution would have been, Tiff, and listeners as well, the solution for me would have been very simple. The FIA say, we made a mistake. Put your hand up. We made a mistake. And as such, it is null and void, or whatever you call a race, write it off. And then Max is champion. Great. So we got a champion, and he's champion because they made a mistake of that, not because of this farce that happened. Surely that would have been the best solution.
I'm bored.
Speaking of Lewis,
I'm done with it.
On to that now?
I'm done with it. Look at the future. Lewis was about the only gossip in the press this week was Lewis went down to the W Series paddocks for the last Grand Prix to see what they're up to meet some of the girls, ladies, women. And when you stop looking out the window when you're talking to me or talking to our guests, it was just what he said, he was saying they need a lot more support, and why isn't the champion go straight into Formula 2? He sort of came up with sort of comments that were coming up 2 or 3 years ago, but it was good that he went down there and he said he watches the racing. But you'll probably know why you can't promote one of the girls straight into Formula 2, because it's too big a step for them, and it's got to be done gradually. But anyway, Lewis was giving his support, as he does to so many other good causes, to W Series. And that was about it. So really,
Lewis Hamilton must know that they're not good enough for F2 in the nicest possible way. In the nicest possible way.
He's not going to say that. He's a nice man supporting them.
Yeah. We're
Anyway,
nice people. We say it. We get it out there. We say it. We're nice people, and we are so supportive of these fantastic female drivers. But they're not good enough for F2. Not even Jamie Chadwick yet.
Yep. So let's get on to some real racing from last weekend. Instead of you bringing up the past again. Yes, the best racing, of course, last weekend was in Britain, and I think you know where.
I know it was. Anglesey, Caterham Racing, and I wasn't there. Can you believe it? It was absolutely epic. That's, of course, what you're talking about.
No, it probably was good, but I never saw it because it was in Anglesey, and I didn't go to Anglesey last weekend just because you would have been or wouldn't have been there. But Charlie Lower, you've beaten the case. You had 2 wins. Great weekend for Charlie, not the normal favourites out front. So, well, Charlie's always there, isn't he, podium? I'm not sure how many he's won this year. Has he won many this year?
He started off with a double header at Brands Hatch as well. Then he went off the pace a little bit. Well, I beat him a couple of times. I don't like to rub it in, of course. But and then because I wasn't there, I'm sure he got 2 wins. No, he had 2 very, very good wins. The first one was very interesting because Jeff Newman, who is the
all right, I'm bored now.
Anyway, it's boring. Yeah, you're right.
Because the best racing, and the best racing I've seen for some years was the Thruxton British Superbikes.
It was amazing.
I was always scared watching them, knowing how quick that circuit is and knowing how, because you see the human. That's the great thing about bike racing. You don't see a top real crash helmet, hidden under a halo. You actually see this human being on this bike. And these 3 all on Yamahas. Of course, it's Jason O'Halloran who's pretty much walking away with the title because his teammate Taryn McKenzie had a slow start to the year because he was injured during the winter. Bradley Ray, who's now coming on strong. But these 3 bikes, the 3 races, I just got the results. Those 3, they left everyone standing. They were covered by 0.9 of a second in the first race, 0.165 of a second, covering all 3 across the line, and 0.293 of a second in the last race. And they were slicing past each other under brake. Halloran had this up the inside at Church, which the commentator, I forget which was the expert. He kept saying it was 170 miles an hour, but no, 130 maybe. But it was just epic. And around that track, the slipstream and the diving up the inside, I said I had holding my breath half the time. And O'Halloran won the first 2 races with Bradley had a third. Bradley Ray had a third. He had third in the second race. But it was Taryn McKenzie who overtook them both on the last lap of the last race. Because O'Halloran and Ray were on opposite lock with smoke coming off of their tyres, going through Church Corner at least, I think, around 130 miles an hour. And then they were both side by side thinking one of us is going to get it because O'Halloran sliced up the inside of Ray going into Church that last time, and Ray tucked inside on the way out thinking, I've got you. And all of a sudden, creeping up 2 miles an hour faster on his right was Taryn McKenzie. And he's thinking, well, what are you doing here? They could have, touched each other, shaken hands, and it was just absolutely epic. Motor racing. I don't care what the form is, whether it's off-road, on-road, on ice, on snow, racing.
2 wheels, 4 wheels, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Tiff, tell me, so it's the fastest race circuit in the UK or in Europe?
Yeah, in Britain for average speed. So I meant to look up the lap time of what they did actually.
Because Damon Hill's got a lap record in a Formula 1 car.
Because that was as I say every time I take my guests for their passenger rides at Thruxton, go to thruxtonracing.co.uk for a passenger ride with Tiff. I point out that when Damon Hill set the fastest lap time round there, averaging 147 miles an hour, he went through Church at 170. Now, that is the full ground effect Grand Prix car with 4 great big fat tyres. He might be able to get through Church at 170, but a biker, he might have arrived. The bikers might have been arriving at 150, but anyway, the speed's irrelevant because even 130. And it was just, and it's, of course, lovely weather, huge crowd. I think, a much bigger crowd, probably the British Grand Prix with the MotoGPs. Well, not in numbers, but in percentage of, occupation of the territory. Yeah, it really was. I mean, the funny thing is that these Yamahas seem to dominate British superbikes, which is the same bike, of course, as Toprak Kyogo has got in the World Superbikes, but he's being beaten by Ducati, Bautista, and the Kawasaki of Ray. So it's funny how the Kawasaki's and I think the Honda is the next best bike in British superbikes, which doesn't seem to feature at all in Worlds. But anyway, those 3 Yamaha.
Do the bikes fluctuate in terms of the hot weather, the temperatures, or the tyres? Or no?
Seems to have been pretty much Yamaha. So maybe different tyres. Where the British have got different tyres to the world, and it just suits the Yamaha boys. but it was epic.
Oh, good.
And of course, the other great British race meet was the British touring cars. You were saying?
No, it's I couldn't imagine seeing a bike going oppo, a bit of oppo with smoke coming off the tyres doing sort of over 100 miles an hour.
Bradley Ray was the first to do it. I think he was going to die. I mean, it must have stepped out of line by, 2 feet, I would have thought. And of course, when they grip, you get a high side. That's the thing about the bikes. When if you don't regain grip progressively, it'll just spit you on your head. It was just, and he still held the lead. He must have just feathered off the throttle, just a tiny amount to regain traction, and then cracked it back to full again because he still, held the lead down the straight. It was amazing. I haven't seen anything like it for years. So well done, you three. Heroes to me. Heroes.
Yeah, good.
And of course, Thruxton, as we keep on saying, the old-fashioned racing circuit only got about 5 corners, but it breeds racing, and that's what modern tracks with 22 corners don't. There's so many lessons to be learned by going to Thruxton.
Why? Because more overtaking, less overtaking. Because the boys were saying about Anglesey, it was rubbish for overtaking. There's only one. Yeah,
only one place per lap.
Yeah.
Even in the cars, there's 2 places. The complex, the Campbell, the Cobb Seagrave, you could overtake into Campbell. And if you cut back, you could overtake into Cobb, the left hand in the middle. You see touring cars will do it. And, you could overtake into Goodwood round the back, and you could overtake down at Church. And it's just, because it's quite a short lap and high speed, the lap times are quite similar and the slipstream works. It's just a great lesson to us all. Less corners. Indianapolis has only got, they call it 4 corners, but it is 4 corners. But, there's a lot of overtaking at Indianapolis. So you need a longish straight between each hazard, because if you come out of a hazard just fractionally quicker, you need a reasonable amount of straight to overtake them. So, whereas British touring cars on the realigned Snetterton circuit, which people seem to like driving around, didn't have much overtaking because it's just a never-ending number of corners. I'm surprised Jonathan Palmer, who I support greatly, most of his ideas are brilliant, but he seems to have over-cornered the Snetterton extension. And it was another BMW parade.
So is it different to how I raced it this year when you say Snetterton extension? Or has there been
Caterhams don't count, all right? It was that track. Caterham's overtake everywhere on any corner. They said not at Anglesey, so maybe Snetterton's better than Anglesey.
I did notice. Sorry, Tiff. I did notice as well when you were talking to the guy that looks after the whole historic priceless collection of Porsche Group C cars. I did notice when you were trying to tap me up for a drive that you didn't say I raced Caterham. You said, "Oh yeah, he's a racing driver." We dropped the word Caterham. Not that there's anything wrong with it, because it is loosely, most amazing racing ever.
But no, so from bikes at the tracks, the other great weekend, because British touring cars up at Snetterton, as I already just mentioned, was another BMW. It went straight from Ingleston. And this time it was the heat that seemed to affect the front-wheel drive cars. Of course, they got steer and power under their little front wheels. And it was just another BMW parade. Colin Turkington won the first 2 races, and the first 6 were all spread out. They couldn't seem to follow close or overtake, and the boost button's not enough of a boost. 4 of the top 5 were all BMWs race. 1 with Tom Ingram hanging in there in the Hyundai as the first front-wheel drive car. But my mate Jason Plato was 6th in the first race, having his best weekend, I think he was in his Honda. The second race, the 4 BMWs, the top 5, with Turkington ahead of Jake Hill, same result. Tom Ingram again, 3rd in the best front-wheel driver. Ricky Collard in the Toyota 6, so good for little Ricky. And then good old
Ricky.
Rob Gravitt. Well, he's a little Ricky Collard. He's small, Ricky Collard, and he's not bad, is he?
Are you heightist now, are you? That's what you'll get now in the comments.
I'm describing the size of a human being. But then the reverse grid, Rob Gravitt was up there. His son races in the mini challenge, and Rob drew out number 9, which just happened to be Ash Sutton. So guess who won the 3rd reverse? There you are. Here's another race win for you, Ash, out of the bowl. And the Goldfish Bowl creates more winners. Poor old Jason Plato was 8th in that second race. And so, of course, he started on the front row and he followed Ash to finish 2nd to get a podium. But maybe the drawn 8, Jason would have got his 98th win. It was his 650th race or 350th, or it was a number anyway. But Jason, if you ever listen, you won't listen to this, Jason, but he was moaning away on the grid, whinge about, I've got the great chassis and I've still got it in me. I've got great laps, and we've got everything sorted. We've just got a donkey of an engine. He's got a Toka engine, because you could either buy a Toka engine, or I think BMW got their own engines, Honda have got their own engine. No, he's in a Honda. Maybe the other Hondas, I don't know. I don't follow who's got what engines.
Yeah, but I thought he was powered by rich energy. I mean, he should be. That's surely that's an advantage.
Well, I would agree. I would have thought rich energy would have poured into the engine and given another 10 horsepower.
Yeah.
Anyway, he moaned like mad on the grid. Got real donkey in the front. Anyway, lap one, he followed Ash onto the back straight. He had two cars right in his rear bumper, slipstreaming him, and he almost pulled away from them. I mean, the way he was talking, why didn't the third and fourth cars just drive past you, Jason? He does moan too much. Jason, you moan too much. You had a great weekend.
Sounds like someone else I know.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Is it like a fifth gear trait or something?
All right, okay. Your car mod. Anyway. So he had a second place.
So basically, he was talking absolute rubbish.
Well,
the amount of excuses racing drivers come up with. So, my power wasn't as good as the other. My tyres, my this, my steering rack, my.
But Jason in the touring car world is fairly well famous for it, unfortunately. But he had such a good weekend. He just didn't need to say it. Not much overtaking. Anyway, a bit of all the midfield was entertaining as always, because the midfield were hitting each other. Lots of dust, because the Stefford edge was so dry, so there's plenty of clouds of dust as people were wheels off. But no real sensation already. The only thing, we never saw it happen. The two Ford boys, Dan Camish and Ash, they'd qualified badly. They got up to about fourth or fifth, I think, at the first lap of the second race, and they went off together. I think someone else caused it, but there was never an interview that actually gave us, or never a replay of what actually happened. But the two Napa Fords dropped, I think Camish went down to 20th. So it wasn't that good a weekend, although Ash got that consolation win.
Good. So
internationally,
weekend at Thruxton.
And
Snetterton as well. Snetterton.
No. Epic at Thruxton. Got it right first time. Entertaining. The Ginetta Juniors. They were epic. So Ginetta Juniors, every time there's a British Touring Car weekend, Ginetta Juniors will supply the best racing, and they continue to do so. And those kids at that age, nerves.
We all agree. We all agree. Caterham at Anglesey was the highlight of the British weekend. So moving on to international stuff.
International NASCAR, not a very exciting round, I'm afraid. Yet again, to have to admit, the Richmond Raceway, the 0.75 mile, didn't really come up with that much exciting racing. And Kevin Harvick, who hadn't won for 2 years, won last weekend, won this weekend. So he took two on the trot in a fairly uneventful race. Just two more races to go in NASCAR before the playoffs. So the interesting thing was this playoffs. Now, who's going to qualify for the playoffs? And amazing, the people that are second and fourth overall in the points aren't one of the 15 drivers that have already won a race. So winning a race gets you straight to the playoffs. Only two races to go. So either Ryan Blaney at the moment, who's second overall in the point system, or Martin Truex, who's fourth overall behind Kyle Larson, obviously. It looks like only one of those is going to make it through the playoffs. So,
wow.
If a real outsider doesn't pay to get sometime.
Yeah.
Well, the weird thing is they've got Watkins Glen coming up, a road course, as they call them. There's also the Daytona. Now, the Daytona's a lottery every time. So if some complete...
Sorry, Tiff, what to people like me, why is Daytona such a lottery?
Because they're all full throttle for the whole race. It's a restrictor plate race. They have their power reduced. So every driver on the field from the back to the front is able to lap on full throttle. So you just sit there trying to side draft slowly and push and change lane and move lane. Just like on a motorway, and change lane and see if you can get a small advantage. It's a bit like that. Change to a different lane, your lane might creep forward a bit.
I'll tell you something to our listeners, that this man, if ever you go in a car with him on the road, he's worse than on a track, because if he can go another 2 miles an hour in a traffic jam faster than another lane, he will on a different lane. And then he swaps the other one and goes to the other one. Oh,
that's Daytona, except they're doing it at 200 miles an hour instead of 2 miles an hour. So that could be fascinating, because if a real outsider wins Daytona, both the person that's second and fourth in the points won't get through the playoffs.
How many go to the playoffs? Is it 16 or 20?
16, just 16. And then it goes down to 8, then it goes to 4. But the biggest news in NASCAR, when we talk about the coming weekend in a minute, which is Watkins Glen, is that Kimi Raikkonen's in the race, the Kimpster. And he's had his one-day testings allowed, very strict rules out there. Another driver can't test your car for you, and you only have so many laps in the morning and so much time. Your day's split up. So Kimi was out, not at Watkins Glen, because that's not allowed either. He's on another different track. But he's in a big team. So the Kimpster Watkins Glen this weekend, try not to miss it somehow.
People love him, don't they? He is. I don't know. It'll be good to see him. It'll be good to see what he does. But people love him. But I like a bit of personality. I like someone that shows a bit of emotion. He doesn't show any emotion. I'm sure he is the Iceman.
He is the Iceman. But anyway, while the best racing I saw was at Britain, average racing in America, the Indianapolis, of course, there were 2 world championships going on last weekend, both electrifying in their power. One had its very first race. And that was the World Rallycross Championship, which I don't know. I mean, where have my notes? Yeah, World Rallycross. Only 8 cars.
Well, let me just before you go on to that, let's just we were one of the pioneers of bringing this to people, the World Rally Championship. So it's on our YouTube. Have a look, because he drives this electric car, this Rallycross car, and you said back then
that best form of motorsport for electric racing. Yeah. I agree. It still is. I mean, it was an amazing spectacle. Apparently, they're very quick. In fact, they were quicker, I think, than their previous petrol round this. They were at Hell in Norway. But I think the trouble is, it's the fact they're pushing it, the World Rallycross Championship. It was too soon. It needed the sort of feeder year, which I thought they were going to have last year, and they didn't. I don't think it's the same regulations as the car we drove, actually. I think it's a different form of electric cars than the one we drove. No, I agree. It's great. It works well. Obviously, lost the sound. And the racing was close, but the problem was there were only 8 cars turned up, and I'm not sure they should have started the championship with so few. Johan Kristoffersson, the current champion, won. He's Swedish. He was followed home by another Swede, who was followed home by a Norwegian, who was followed home by a Swede. And the only non-Scandinavian driver in the 5-car final was a Finn. And the trouble is, I think, if you're talking about a world championship, and the FIA, when you look at me, where are you going? You keep on diverting.
I'm looking. There's an unbelievable site that I cannot tell you about, because you get very excited when I tell you about.
So, yeah, shut up on the other side, wherever your office is over there. So yeah, the FIA, you lose your world championship status if you don't have races in different continents. And all the remaining rounds, there are some in the Spa and the Nürburgring, they've had those before the end of the season in Spain. It's about 6 rounds, all in Europe. And they're calling it a world championship. So,
how can it be a world championship in Europe?
That's what I've just said. If you've been listening to me in the first place.
It was a rhetorical question.
All right.
I was agreeing with you. Okay, so there is hope. There is hope there for Rallycross, though, with electric cars. But is there hope for Formula E?
Well, it's got a new gen starting next year. We had the last round, of course, the FE Championship in Seoul, and you get your audience quiet in the back. You're putting me right off. I can't concentrate. They went to the Seoul Olympic Stadium, where, of course, it's got a capacity of about 70 or 100,000 seats. So maybe the 1,000 that were there for the Formula E race, it could be 2,000, I'm guessing, made it look like a very small grid. And it was a win for Mitch Evans, any person that could win the championship. It was way up. It was Stoffel Van Dorn. Julie got enough points to win the world title. Won Mercedes, the manufacturer's title. They're all hugging each other. And of course, Mercedes are leaving the championship, having produced they've done the winning drive for the last 2 years, and now the winning champions. The first race, it was raining, wet. It was wet and drying. And it was the second half of 7 cars went straight on at the end of the back straight like darts into the barriers. And I don't know.
They didn't even turn. They didn't even turn. Oh, because
the worrying thing. Yeah, I know when the aqua play, but they all had their semi-wet tyres on. But I think the trouble is that they've got this weird automatic brake bias that you can't. Your engine at the rear is doing the regen, and that gives you a certain amount of retardation. You have to match balance with the fronts. And maybe on this first lap, where the brakes went up to temperature, that those 7 cars didn't have their brake balance rule. The driver can't do it. It's a computer doing most of it, I think. And that looked fairly silly.
But it did look silly. If you haven't seen it, they literally went straight. Didn't even seem to have any lock on. I'm sure they did, but it was just the most bizarre thing. We've seen it in Formula 1 before. We've seen it in different motorsports before, but it was wet. But They didn't even turn.
Anyway.
It was anyway. Yeah,
They all droned
I can't
around.
get excited.
They all droned in and out of the stadium, droning round and round. And poor old Jack Nicholls, the commentator, does some great. Him and Dario Franchitti, they build it up and hype it up. But even Jack Nicholls on the second race on Sunday, on about the third lap, he was always saying, if so-and-so finishes 7th ahead of so-and-so, he'll move up to 9th in the points table. And if Van Dorn keeps going, the Mercedes will win. The only thing he could talk about was permutations of who was going to move up from 6th to 5th in the championship or 3rd to 2nd. Anyway, of course, that's it for the year. They still have this ridiculous calling their calendars 21-22, and now the 22-23 championship, which doesn't start until January in Mexico City. So that's 2023, isn't it? Why do they keep calling it? Anyway, this is the new Gen 3 car, the third of the generations of cars, which has no rear brakes at all. And so the computer's going to have to work out, because I think when a battery's full, you don't get much regen, so you don't get much retardation. So you've got to use there's no rear brake to add to that retardation. It's the weirdest system, but there it is. So you've got to wait until January, everyone. Get excited now. No Mercedes there. Don't know
Can I say something now, please, Dad?
Yes.
Theo, I'm going to go talk Caterham again, but Theo, your mate, our mate, in the McCat car, got a 2nd and a 3rd place.
And a pole position, the first race I saw.
I know, and I just want to say...
Theo Theato. Was it Theo Theato?
Theo Theato, yeah.
Theato.
So I just want to say...
Commentator's nightmare of a name.
I can't get a normal name right. You're good with names. I'm not very good. So that was it in the world of motorsport around the world. What have we got next week?
Next week, IndyCar's kicking off. It's almost 3 on the trot. 3 last weekends. Championship. Now 5 drivers at least with a proper chance of winning. They got 1 oval. They always have this system: 1 oval, 1 street course, 1 road course. So there's a Gateway Oval this weekend. There's a Portland Street race in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and then Laguna Seca, September the 11th. So worth getting into IndyCar now, even if you're bored or haven't followed it all year, because it's just down to the last 3 rounds. It's all going to be over in about a month's time, less than a month, and 5 drivers still possible. All the gossip, of course, of who's signed who for next year, who's going to McLaren, who's going to drive for McLaren, who's not. So plenty of interest in IndyCar. World Rally Championship comes to Belgium, which is sort of really tight, narrow tarmac strips and bits of dirt and mud. And Calais Rovanpera, I think, if he won it, could almost mathematically win the championship with about 5 rounds still to go. And there's the Hyundai boys, Ott Tanak, of course, if he could repeat his Finland result. And we've got Thierry Neuville, Belgian. Hyundai's an awful year, but he's obviously on home soil. He'd want to win. So good IndyCar, World Rally Championship, very different. MotoGP, Red Bull Ring. Always a bit of a crazy, especially the Moto3. They have this qualifying chaos there where they all go around in these bunches trying to back off and get the slipstream, and in such a short circuit, they're all falling over each other in the qualifying. So there'll be massive qualifying and massive track limits aggro, probably, because that's what the circuit they've designed creates. If you design a circuit creates track limits, you'll get what you ask for. Meanwhile,
so it sounds like we're going to have a quick podcast next week.
Well, no, because I'll be talking about track limits in Moto3, and who knows, our boys, and who knows, could be some great results. But we also be talking next week about how Kimi got on at Watkins, a real old-fashioned Grand Prix circuit with barriers right by the tracks, no room for errors. And again, I think we need questions. I think we need questions from our audience next week. I can't believe that's going to be a half-an-hour session. But thanks for joining us this week. We look forward to a cosmic, exciting weekend next weekend of cosmic.
No.
What was in that you were drinking? Was that vodka you've been drinking, or what?
Well, I wasn't. I was drinking a bit of sparkle stuff that I was handed over by my lovely colleague, and I don't normally drink it, but it went down rather well.
I think you better concentrate on how the meeting is going to go tomorrow. Get your head together.
I will. Don't worry about that. I'll see you on Thursday at the British Motor Show.
Oh yes, Thursday. I forgot we're there. Thursday, we're both at Farnborough competing in some Olympics. At the end of the day, come to the British Motor Show on Thursday. We're there.
Commonwealth Games.
Commonwealth Games. Very good.
Good stuff. See you, Tiff. See you all.
Cheers.
Bye.